I think I like this brand new, warm, fuzzy, thank you, sir, Dan Dibley.
Well, I was moved.
Wow.
Mark, I was moved.
The cynicism left town this weekend.
I'm normally cynical because the situation calls for cynicism. But when I heard Draymond today, and I'm only halfway through, and I look forward to catching the second half on my walk back to the parking garage after the show tonight at about 6 o'clock. But I've never heard Draymond talk about his own situation in that way. And he even addresses Draymond in the past and how Draymond would talk about sorry butt. And actually, Steve Kerr mentioned it to Draymond, and Draymond's wife, Angel, I think her name is, mentioned it to Draymond about how this time, after the Nurkic hit, after the Nurkic flail, Draymond came out and there was no sorry butt. It was just sorry. And I do think that Draymond is in a spot now where he understands where he is, not only as a basketball player, but as a person. And I think that he does want to be better. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I don't normally do benefit of the doubt, especially when it comes to Draymond Green. But when I heard him earlier and I walked in and I talked to Nahigian and Lucas, who had shared a little bit of the interview, and he shared the link, and I listened to it and the podcast. And I don't love Draymond's podcast normally because it's a lot of Draymond. It's a lot of Draymond bravado, and it's a lot of like hating on the old media, and I'm the new media, and all the rest of the braggadocio-ness. This time I heard a Draymond I've never heard before.
Do you know who loves his podcast?
Draymond.
And his parent company, The Volume.
I saw that.
Draymond has signed a multi-year extension.
Good for Draymond.
With The Volume.
It's great.
For the Draymond Green Show podcast. Returning for its third season. Dibs.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. And I'm not a normal listener of the pod. Even when something comes out of it that is newsworthy and that we'll talk about it, I normally will listen to the pod, and within 90 seconds, I'm like, I don't want to listen to this guy. I don't want to hear from you, Draymond. I'll get the clips. We'll play the highlights, and that's all I need to know. But this time, I heard a Draymond I've never heard before, Mark.
Well, and
I hope that it's real.
Yeah, maybe it's lip service.
Could be.
And we'll find out in probably 7 to 10 days or whatever. Right. And that will then continue. We're not going to get an answer in one game or one quarter.
Right.
I know that.
Right.
I know you do have him for a technical foul. Within the first 2 quarters? Was that it? What did we bet on? I don't think we bet.
We didn't actually bet.
We discussed it.
I had it on the opening possession. But honestly, now that I've heard from Draymond in his pod,
never again.
No
technicals ever. If I put it at a half a technical, would you take the over or the under for the rest of his career?
Well, it's funny you say that because driving in today, before I heard the pod, I was going to put the over-under at 8.5 for this year. Technical fouls.
Now you're taking the under.
I would take the under, but I would bet that he gets a tech within the first 3 games. Just because there are 2 different things here. There is the arguing with referees piece, and then the other piece is the flagrant foul, the cheap shot, and the other side. I think that second side is where Draymond is really going to be different. The technicals and what he does as a player, I don't think that goes down at all.
Well, he's still got to be as they would all tell you, the heart and soul of the team.
Right,
and he's got to be a leader, and he's got to be vocal. Draymond's never not going to be vocal. As he's sitting here telling you all of these things that got to you, what was he doing? He was being vocal. He was hosting a podcast. So I'll agree with you there, but it's sort of a bigger issue. I was struck by Klay Thompson's words last night. A lot of us, when Jordan Poole came to town a few weeks ago, everyone's like, look at the way the team responded to him. Look at the hugs on the court. Look at the words on the side. Look at the press conference where they really backed him and, they work out together. And it makes you think it's like, yeah, they took Jordan's side. No. These guys will sit there and say the exact same stuff about Draymond. And Klay Thompson last night said he's a difference maker, and I cannot wait to have him back on the floor. I bet Steph Curry feels the exact same way, and we'll find out if they look like a different team. Better, worse, about the same, coming up here real soon. But listen, what they feel has always been obvious. It's always been obvious. And I find that really relevant because what I think we've all been doing for the last couple of months and really for the last couple of weeks, as the losses pile up and the trade deadline approaches, there has been a very consistent drumbeat about how to change it up on the fly and get themselves into the playoffs this year and satisfy everybody's anger so Draymond could be punished by being sent to Detroit or Charlotte or something like that, and let Clay know that he's done. Just turn him into an expiring deal and send him on the way out the door. And while all of this discussion is taking place, much of it right here on 95.7 The Game, Steve is like in a car driving to Draymond's house so they can sit together and cry as they talk this over about the end of their careers and the run. And it just struck me. I don't even necessarily know what everyone's opinion is. This group ain't going anywhere. And for me, just me now, they shouldn't. I hope they don't. The more I think about this, the idea of some sort of a quick fix that matters, you'll hear Warriors fans be like, championship's the only thing that matters. Well, then fine. Then just have a cigar, sit back and relax. Because there's no Siakam leads him to a title headline. That's not the deal.
No.
And so I am here for Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green finishing their careers together as Golden State Warriors, and I am completely willing to take whatever that looks like.
Well, then you're open to the trade of Andrew Wiggins and Kuminga and Moody and maybe others, because if you really want to make the most of Steph Curry's window, then you need to do something, because this team, as it's comprised, is not good enough to do anything. And Draymond comes back, you still might be an 11 seed, and you got Chris Paul expiring, so let's do something. Because I don't think you're wrong in terms of the big three, and I think the big three are going to ride it out together. Whether or not Steve Kerr is a part of it, that comes down to he and Joe Lacob, and it feels to me with each passing day that becomes less likely that Steve Kerr would want to be a part of this, or that Joe Lacob would want him to be a part of it. It feels, I don't know, it feels more disconnected to me than ever before.
It does.
Joe Lacob going to a press conference to sit in after Jonathan Kuminga doesn't play in a fourth quarter. I don't know if it's coincidence or Joe just happened to be there, or like, could Joe not get the live feed in his office? Like, why would you go down there other than to make a presence, make your presence be felt?
There's a restroom right next door. He probably had to go.
Yeah.
And then he was like, oh, I'm here. I'm in the neighborhood.
Might as well pop in.
We'll stop by.
Chris Paul out for 4 weeks, at least, with a broken hand. So, I mean, why not trade Chris Paul? And Andrew Wiggins,
I'm open to anything.
You start him, you sit him, you sit him, you start him.
Yeah.
He's terrible.
Well, here's the problem. Is Chris Paul a tradable contract? Sure. Andrew Wiggins, I bet the Warriors would love to get something in return for that, because he can't play with Jonathan Kuminga.
He can't play.
Or maybe he can't play, although sometimes he can.
Right.
As we all know. Like, sometimes he goes out there and looks great. And it's a lot to ask now of any player. This has always been true for bench players, and that's what Andrew is right now. It's hard.
He started last night.
I know, but
1 of 6, 2 rebounds, -29.
Terrible.
My God,
terrible.
Mark.
But at the same time, we know that when you're assessing players in an 8-minute stretch and then deciding the rest of their night on that, you're going to get good and you're going to get bad. That happens to Moody sometimes. Sometimes Moody comes in and goes 4 for 5. And then the crowd gets mad when he gets pulled out. Sometimes he goes out there and goes 0 for 5. And you're like, well, that's it for him tonight. That's really hard. So I'm sure the Warriors would love to try to do something with Andrew Wiggins. So just go on that premise. Wiggins and Kuminga don't play together. Fine. You got to move one. Here's the problem. Warriors want to move Wiggins. The league wants them to move Kuminga. So what do? Because you probably need to move one of them.
You move Wiggins.
Yeah, well,
and you take what you can get.
Okay, and that is definitely a strategy, and that is an answer.
Yeah.
And that may be what they do. I do agree with you. I think that a move is coming, a pretty significant one. I don't know what's on the table. I'd be open to almost anything. I think the Warriors are too. I guess maybe what I'm saying today is I'm adjusting a little bit what I think that deal means. There are a lot of you who think make a deal to maximize. Okay, are we maximizing Steph's window? And that in our minds means there's a deal that happened in the next 3 weeks that makes the Warriors contenders again this year. No, that's not how I see it. I don't think there is any contention this year.
Just make the playoffs.
Okay.
Make a deal to make the playoffs.
And they probably can do that.
Because if you make the playoffs, then you can be contenders.
Absolutely. Or just you're a playoff team. It changes everything in terms of your morale, your outlook.
Miami went from the play-in to the championship round last year.
Yeah, you could do it. You could do it. So, but I just, it's like it's got to both make some sense right now in terms of basketball, but also in terms of finances and flexibility and organizational health going forward. It's not one goal. It's not make them good right now. I don't know that that's there. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. These three legends have brought us everything. And I am completely willing to see what it is they have left and what it is they do next.